At a high-end furniture showroom, a black woman in worn-out jeans walks in, hoping to buy a reading chair to celebrate a personal milestone. But instead of receiving help, she's met with cold stares and a manager's public outburst that ends with her being thrown out. The staff laugh, thinking they've gotten rid of a nuisance. What they don't know is, they picked the wrong woman to mess with. And in just a few moments, she's going to show them who really owns the place. Before we dive in this story, let us know where you're watching from. We love to hear your thoughts. The crystal pendant lights caught every shard of daylight pouring through the glass facade of Nordcrest Interiors, refracting it across polished walnut floors like falling stars. The space gleamed, curated to perfection. Marble counters, velvet walls, minimalist floral arrangements, and furniture pieces that looked more like sculptures than items you'd ever dare sit on. Italian leather loungers, mahogany dining sets with brass inlays. A single handcrafted chaise lounge that cost more than some people's annual income. Every corner whispered exclusivity, and every whisper was about to be silenced. Elliot Crane's voice cut through the showroom like a jagged blade. "Get her out, now!" His words weren't loud, they were sharp, the kind that sliced clean, then left a burn. He wasn't just speaking, he was seething. "This is not a shelter, this is Nordcrest." His jaw clenched, and for a moment the veins in his neck looked like thick cords ready to snap. He took one step forward, suit perfectly tailored, face blotched in fury. His finger jabbed the air like a weapon. "Security, get this woman out of here before I do it myself." Customers froze mid-conversation. One woman gasped and clutched her Chanel tote to her chest. A couple standing near a $32,000 0-cents hand-carved armoire exchanged uneasy glances. The employees behind the counter looked paralyzed, not with confusion. They knew who was being targeted, but with fear. No one moved. At the center of it all, a woman stood with her hands calmly folded in front of her. Her hoodie was faded, the hem of her jeans frayed, her sneakers tired from too many steps. Her skin was warm brown, her posture upright, and her presence, quiet but immovable, radiated the kind of authority no amount of training could teach. She didn't flinch, didn't raise her voice. Her gaze met Elliot's, steady, emotionless, and then she spoke. Her voice didn't shake, it didn't rise, it didn't tremble. It sliced through the static like cold steel. "You have no idea what you've just done." Elliot blinked. Not out of confusion, but out of disbelief. That tone, that confidence, it unnerved him. This woman, whoever she thought she was, had the nerve to stand there with that look in her eyes, like she was the one doing the firing. He snapped back. "I don't care what sob story you've rehearsed," he spat, his voice curdling with disdain. "You don't belong here. Our pieces are curated for clientele with," he glanced at her shoes, "taste." The woman's lips curved. It wasn't a smile, it was something colder, a warning wrapped in elegance. She looked around the showroom, letting her eyes drift slowly across every face that had witnessed the outburst. Some wouldn't meet her gaze, others did with discomfort, even shame. She didn't scream, she didn't beg, she just looked, and somehow that silence was louder than Elliot's rage. "You've just shattered everything this brand is supposed to stand for," she said quietly, more to the room than to him. "Everything I've spent years building." There was a pause. A beat. A breathless second where everyone around seemed to forget how to move. Elliot's face tightened. "I said get out." The security guard hesitated. The woman didn't. She turned, stepped away from the Italian entry rug, and walked toward the glass doors with the kind of grace that demanded respect, not begged for it. No one followed, no one stopped her, but every head in the room turned to watch. No one knew her name. No one realized that the woman they had just humiliated was the CEO who had purchased Nordcrest Interiors 3 months ago for $86 million 0 cents in cash. That she was the owner of this store, of this brand, of every damn chair and table in that showroom. But they were about to find out. And Elliot Crane's world, his title, his voice, his authority, was about to be dismantled by the same quiet presence he had just screamed at, like a child. because Talia Monroe wasn't finished, not even close, and what came next would make the silence in that showroom feel like thunder. Long before that showroom erupted in outrage, long before the silence and shame swallowed the space whole, Talia Monroe already knew what she was walking into. That wasn't surprise on her face when Elliot Crane humiliated her. It was confirmation. 3 months earlier, Monroe Atelier had acquired the struggling yet prestigious Nordcrest Interiors in a quiet buyout that stunned the design world. It was a strategic move, a merger of old-world aesthetics and modern vision. But for Talia, it wasn't about power, it was about principle. She had built her name on the belief that furniture was never just furniture. It was memory, it was history, it was belonging. So when quiet complaints began trickling in from her assistant, from friends, even from old clients, stories whispered at dinner tables or in soft DMs about customers being treated differently at Nordcrest depending on what they wore, how they looked, or where they came from, Talia didn't send a corporate memo. She packed a hoodie. That morning, instead of dressing in her usual silk blouse and tailored slacks, Talia reached into the far corner of her closet and pulled out what could only be described as invisible clothes. The gray hoodie was worn thin at the elbows, the jeans were scuffed and loose at the knees, and the sneakers, once white, were dulled by years of pavement. No makeup, no jewelry, no driver. She walked through the chaos of Midtown Manhattan, past the people who didn't look twice at a middle-aged black woman in beat-up shoes, past the same neighborhoods where she'd once lived, back when she was sanding chair legs in the Bronx at age 19. This wasn't disguise. It was memory. When Talia stepped into Nordcrest that morning, it wasn't with the hesitation of a first-time shopper. It was with the focus of a woman conducting surgery. Every blink, every raised brow, every "can I help you?" or worse, every silence would be a data point. A test, a moment measured, because Talia knew that true culture wasn't what you wrote in a handbook. It was how you treated someone when you didn't think they mattered. Inside, the showroom was immaculate as always. A young couple near the reception desk was being lavished with attention, mimosas in hand, fabric samples spread like tarot cards before them. An older white man in a Burberry trench was being led to a private consultation room without even having to ask. And Talia, she stood quietly beside a velvet chaise, running her fingers gently across the armrest, admiring the craftsmanship she herself had helped standardize in their factories. Not a single associate approached her. Not a nod, not a greeting, just glances that skated off her skin like she didn't exist. When she moved toward the front counter, the receptionist, Sophie as her name tag read, didn't even look up. Talia stood there, waiting. 10 seconds, 20, then finally Sophie raised her eyes and immediately furrowed her brows like she'd caught someone loitering, not browsing. "If you're looking for our catalog," she said, tone syrupy but cold, "you can find it online." No smile, no warmth, just dismissal wrapped in polite consonants. Talia responded evenly. "Actually, I wanted to see the handcrafted reading chairs. Perhaps the Mahler series, in walnut finish?" Sophie's lips twitched, not quite into a smile. "Those start at $8,000, she said, her tone sharpening slightly. "We usually recommend something more accessible at our outlet branch in Long Island City." That was when Elliot arrived. The rest, as we've already seen, unfolded like a match lit in a room filled with gas. But here's what they didn't know. Talia Monroe wasn't just running a test on them. She was running a test on herself. Could she still walk unseen? Could she still feel that sting she once knew too well? The one that came when people looked at her and decided instantly that she didn't belong. And yes, she felt it. Every cold glance, every tightening of posture, every forced smile that never reached the eyes, it all came rushing back, reminding her why she had built Monroe Atelier in the first place. So when Elliot screamed, when security stepped forward, when her dignity was handled like clutter to be cleared from a pristine showroom, she didn't react with rage, she reacted with memory. This wasn't new, it was familiar, and that was what made it unforgivable. When the glass door closed behind her and the city noise returned like a distant tide, Talia didn't cry. She didn't breathe heavy. She reached into the back pocket of those faded jeans and pulled out her phone. One text, 8 words. It's worse than we thought. Prep Protocol 7. Because this wasn't going to be a lesson. This was going to be an overhaul. And when she returned, it wouldn't be as a stranger. The text had been sent. Protocol 7 was in motion, and while the staff inside Nordcrest Interiors congratulated themselves on maintaining the so-called integrity of their elite showroom, Talia Monroe was already setting the stage for something far greater than retaliation. This wasn't about ego. It wasn't about making someone grovel. It was about truth, undeniable, indisputable, and public. An hour later, as the autumn sun began its slow descent between Manhattan's glass towers, the woman who had been thrown out like clutter returned. Only this time, she didn't come to be noticed. She came to be recognized. The doors of Nordcrest slid open again, but no one looked up right away. Not until the sound of heels echoed, slow, deliberate, unapologetic. She didn't walk in. She arrived. A tailored black suit hugged her frame with quiet power. Her silk blouse, crisp and ivory, buttoned clean to the collar. Her lipstick, a deep burgundy, matched the bottom of her crimson heels. Her tightly coiled hair was swept into a sculptural bun. No one would have guessed she'd worn a hoodie and sneakers just an hour earlier. But this wasn't a costume. This was her armor. Talia stepped through the polished entry like she owned it. Because she did. But what was most unsettling wasn't what she wore, it was the stillness on her face. Calm, cold, measured. The kind of expression that made you instinctively lower your voice. She didn't glance around. She walked straight to the reception desk where Sophie sat again, still pristine, still perfect, still poised with her fake smile customer service voice. Sophie looked up and froze. Something flickered across her eyes. Recognition? Confusion? No. Dread. Before she could speak, Talia's voice landed like a gavel. "I'd like to speak with your regional director," she said. "Let him know that Talia Monroe is here." Her words were razor-sharp, each one a verdict. She didn't shout. She didn't need to. The air itself seemed to tighten around them. Across the room, Elliot Crane looked up from a display of imported armchairs. He squinted, eyebrows raised with irritation and disbelief, and then his mouth curled into a smug, sideways sneer. He stepped forward, hands casually tucked into the pockets of his designer slacks. "Oh, it's you again," he said, chuckling under his breath. "Guess a quick change and some lipstick makes you feel more qualified, huh?" His tone was syrupy and sarcastic, the kind that carried the weight of someone too ignorant to recognize a landslide coming. Talia didn't even turn her head toward him. "I don't know what scam you think you're pulling," he continued, a scoff in his throat. "But if you think dressing up will get you inside a place like this—" The door at the back of the showroom slammed open. Everyone turned. And in rushed Marcus Santiago, the regional director, the man who oversaw 5 Nordcrest locations from New York to Philadelphia. His tie was loose, his suit jacket slightly wrinkled from the sprint. His eyes scanned the room like a man searching for a fire. When they landed on Talia, everything stopped. The blood drained from his face in real time. "Miss Monroe?" His voice cracked under the weight of 2 truths colliding. The woman before him was the new owner, and his staff had just made the biggest mistake of their careers. The showroom went still. Every conversation halted. Every customer turned. Every employee stood frozen like porcelain. Elliot looked between Marcus and Talia, still refusing to process it. "Wait. Her? She's the new—" He started to laugh, but it broke midway. "You can't be serious. Her?" And then, with fatal arrogance, he added, "This troublemaker?" Marcus Santiago shut his eyes briefly, like someone had slammed his head against a wall. "Elliot," he whispered, but it was too late. Talia turned to face him. Fully now, her expression unflinching, her voice glacial. "No, Mr. Crane," she said, "I'm not a troublemaker." She reached into her blazer and retrieved a matte dress business card. Clean, simple, elegant. She placed it gently on the counter between them, with the sound so soft it still managed to echo through the entire showroom. Talia Monroe, Chief Executive Officer, Monroe. Atelier Group. Nordcrest Interiors. She took one breath. I'm the woman who signs your paychecks. The silence that followed wasn't just stunned, it was suffocating. Sophie looked like someone had pulled the floor out from under her. An intern in the corner dropped a tray of espresso samples. Elliot stood there, blinking like the room was spinning. Customers stared, trying to make sense of what they'd just witnessed. The woman thrown out an hour ago was the owner, the visionary, the one who'd built the company that had just bought their beloved store. But Talia wasn't done. She turned back to Marcus Santiago, her tone now cutting through the silence like piano wire. I suggest you observe how your staff treats potential customers. She paused, closely. Her gaze swept across the room, and in that moment no one dared look away, because the mask had come off, and consequences were about to walk in wearing heels. The silence in the showroom held for a long, unbearable beat after Talia Monroe placed her business card on the counter. No one moved. No one breathed. The woman they had treated like a stain on their showroom floor was, in fact, the highest authority in the company. She wasn't just important, she was final. And what came next would prove it. Marcus Santiago's hands were shaking. He knew exactly what Protocol 7 meant. It wasn't a slap on the wrist. It was a full system audit. Emergency disciplinary measures, crisis-level damage control. He turned to his staff, voice taut, clipped. Clear the floor. Customers may finish browsing, but no new consultations, no more interactions. The associates scattered like leaves in a storm. Taliaba didn't blink. Her attention was fixed on Elliot Crane. Call everyone, she said. Her voice wasn't raised, but it was command. All managers, all floor staff, now. 10 minutes later, the team stood in a half-circle facing her, some still in disbelief, others already sweating through their collared shirts. Customers had migrated to the far end of the store, murmuring behind displays of teakwood dining tables and quartz console sets. Talia stepped forward, holding a sleek black tablet. Her thumb tapped once. The showroom lights dimmed slightly as a projector lit up on the back wall. Footage began to play. There was no narration, no editing, just security footage, time-stamped, undeniable. First, it showed Talia entering the showroom in her hoodie and sneakers, walking past 3 employees, all of whom looked directly at her and turned away. The camera zoomed from angle to angle, her browsing the product lines, her approaching the desk, Sophie ignoring her for nearly 30 seconds before offering that icy non-greeting. The room shifted in discomfort as her request to see the reading chairs was met with a patronizing redirect to the outlet store. Then came the confrontation, Elliot's voice raised and aggressive, the command to remove her, the moment security advanced toward her like she'd stolen something, not simply asked about a product. Talia never said a word as the video played. She didn't need to. The images did the speaking. The next clip sealed it. It showed a white man in a navy pinstripe suit walking in less than 10 minutes later. He was greeted immediately with a handshake, ushered to the private viewing area, offered sparkling water and pastries. When he asked to see the exact same reading chairs Talia had mentioned, Sophie nearly tripped over herself getting the samples. The video ended. The room was silent again. But this silence was heavier, no longer confusion. Now it was shame. Talia's eyes swept across the team like a scanner. She didn't yell, she didn't preach. Her voice was low, calm, and merciless. This is not a training issue. This is not about a bad day. This is a pattern, a culture, a sickness. She turned her gaze directly to Elliot. And cultures like this don't form overnight. They are allowed, encouraged, modeled. Elliot opened his mouth, but no words came. He looked around like someone searching for a life raft that wasn't there. Talia nodded once to Marcus. Effective immediately, Marcus said, clearing his throat. Elliot Crane is terminated. He will be escorted off the premises and permanently barred from future employment within the Monroe Atelier Group. Gasps, whispers. Someone in the back muttered, "Oh my God." Elliot stepped back, mouth hanging open, face pale. "Miss Monroe, please, if I had known," he stammered, hands raised like a man pleading for air. Talia's head tilted slightly. Her expression didn't change. "That's exactly the problem," she said. "Your respect shouldn't depend on knowing who I am." The room fell deeper into silence. Talia turned to Sophie. "You are suspended pending full review. Your behavior reflects poorly not only on your training but on your sense of decency." Sophie nodded mutely. Mascara smudged at the corners of her eyes. Then she faced the security guard, Travis, whose posture had gone rigid. "You placed your hands on a woman who did nothing wrong. You will step back from your role immediately and submit to disciplinary review. You are lucky this is not a civil suit." No one spoke. Talia looked at all of them now, her voice steadier than ever. "When you choose to discriminate, you also choose to shorten your own future. That is a decision no one makes for you." The weight of her words settled over the team like stone. But Talia wasn't just here to cut down. She had come to rebuild, and what she would do next would change the company forever. The reckoning was over. The damage had been done, exposed and addressed in full daylight. But Talia Monroe hadn't come just to destroy a toxic system. She came to plant something better in its place. Because in her world, justice didn't end with punishment. It began with restoration. The next morning, Nordcrest Interiors didn't open at 10 as usual. Instead, the showroom doors stayed locked, and a single printed notice hung on the glass. "Closed today for company realignment, leadership present." Inside, the entire staff, sales, design, logistics, and support, sat facing a temporary stage built in the center of the showroom floor. The crystal chandeliers above them still shimmered, but the mood was sobered, reflective. Talia stood before them in soft navy, no heels, no armor, just presence. "There's a reason I didn't shut this location down entirely," she began, voice steady, eyes calm but firm. "It's not because what happened yesterday was minor. It wasn't. It was systemic. It was embedded. But culture can be unlearned and values can be reclaimed, if we're willing to do the work." Behind her, screens lit up with the new rollout. She introduced Training 360, Human-Centered Service, a mandatory 6-month program designed not by internal HR, but by independent equity specialists and psychologists who understood implicit bias and emotional intelligence at their core. Every team member, from entry-level to regional leadership, would undergo immersive workshops, interactive, personal, uncomfortable, necessary. She laid out new performance evaluations, not just based on sales or customer feedback, but on fairness metrics. Did the associate engage with every customer equally, regardless of appearance? Did they make assumptions? Did they offer the same experience to the woman in sneakers as the man in Gucci loafers? A new feedback system would be launched that week, anonymous, real-time, and visible to leadership. And if a pattern of bias emerged, consequences would be swift. But the most powerful moment came when Talia looked out over the team and said, "What we sell here isn't just furniture. It's what people build memories on, what children climb on, what couples gather around. You cannot sell comfort if your store is a place of quiet exclusion. That ends today." And then she did something no one expected. She asked, "Is Camille still here?" Heads turned. The showroom was quiet. A few seconds later, a voice from the side spoke up. A young black woman in a slate-gray pantsuit stepped forward. "Camille?" The customer who had walked in the day before, hoping to celebrate a promotion by buying herself a handcrafted reading chair, only to be subtly brushed off and discouraged. Talia walked down from the platform and met Camille face to face. "What happened to you shouldn't have happened to anyone," she said softly, "and I want to make it right." She led Camille toward the Mahler chairs. Yes, the same model she herself had been denied, and invited her to choose the finish, fabric, and cushion depth. "This piece," Talia said, "is on us, And if you're willing, we'd be honored if you join our next campaign as a featured customer. Not because of what happened yesterday, but because of who you are." Camille's eyes welled, not from the gift, but from being seen. Thalia turned back to the team one last time. "Respect is not a luxury product, it is the baseline. If we can't offer that, we're not worthy of this brand." She let the words hang, and then she said the line that would later be framed across every Nordcrest showroom in the country. "We don't just sell chairs. We sell the feeling that you belong." And that begins with the very first glance. The room didn't applaud. It didn't need to. Something deeper had settled. Accountability, yes, but also clarity, purpose, renewal. The transformation wouldn't happen overnight. Culture never does. But a new standard had been set, and this time no one could pretend they didn't see who was walking through the door.